I never thought that spiritual retreat would end in such a disturbing vision that would haunt me to this day. I was fasting and praying in the early morning, when the clock struck 3:30. The wind stopped, the temperature in the room dropped, and a dense shadow fell over the room. I felt as if someone had pulled me from the earth, and in the blink of an eye, I found myself in a place where the pain never ends. It wasn't a dream or a nightmare, it was a revelation. If you're listening to this, write in the comments what country you're listening from, because I want to pray for you and your family. This testimony isn't for entertainment, it's a warning. I found myself in a dark desert, without stars or moon. The ground was burning beneath my feet, and in the distance, screams that sounded like distorted choirs could be heard. A smell of sulfur and burning flesh enveloped me. Then a voice resounded like 1,000 drums. Look carefully, for you will speak what you see. In front of me, a crack opened, and from within emerged a staircase made of bones and liquid fire. I descended trembling, knowing it wasn't by my will, but by heaven's command. When I reached the bottom, I was met with a macabre sight. A gigantic stage stretched out in the middle of hell. It wasn't a human theater, it was an amphitheater of shadows built with columns of skulls and curtains of fire. In the center, surrounded by thousands of damned souls, I saw a hunched figure with a microphone in his hand. His face was wasted, but his features were still recognizable. Freddie Mercury, the rock idol, the man whose voice had shaken generations. But what I heard weren't songs of glory. They were distorted screams that turned into chains. Every time he opened his mouth, from his throat came not musical notes, but wails laced with fire. Satan approached him, dressed in a black cloak covered in strange symbols, and forced him to sing. Sing, Freddie, sing, he said mockingly. On earth, you used your voice as an altar for me. You sang of rebellion, of lust, of idolatry. Now sing for me in eternity. The multitudes of souls surrounded him like an audience, applauding with chains. Each applause was a whip falling on his body. I saw scenes from his concerts projected, but distorted. Instead of lights and cheers, there were flames and screams. Every chorus that millions had sung on earth was now repeated in hell like cruel mockery. We are the champions, the demons shouted. But it transformed into we are the damned. Freddie wept blood, trying to let go of the microphone, but it was fused to his hand. Satan looked at him and held up a contract made of fire. Do you remember the pact, Freddie? Do you remember the altars of pleasure, the stages turned into temples, the nights where you pledged your soul for glory and applause? All that was a price, and now you pay it. The Spirit spoke to me clearly. See how the enemy uses gifts as chains. His voice was a gift. It could have been used to proclaim life, but he chose vanity. On earth, millions worshipped him as a god, but here he is an eternal slave. Tell them that what is sown in the flesh is reaped in the spirit. Tell them that fame does not save, that talent does not redeem, that only Christ breaks contracts. I saw demons disguised as fans raising burning banners with lines from his songs. They approached the stage and shouted his name, but each shout was a fire engulfing him. I understood that idolatry does not stop on earth, it continues to fuel fires in the abyss. Freddie was used as a trophy, not as an artist, but as a warning. My knees trembled. The spectacle was real, but it wasn't entertainment, it was judgment. Freddie Mercury sang in hell, not with melodies, but with screams of pain, and Satan, his executioner, savored every note as victory. The stage burned like a living volcano. The demons began to organize what it looked like a hellish concert. The audience wasn't excited fans, they were damned souls screaming in pain, forced to applaud with chained hands. Every clap was a metallic sound, like shackles clashing, and every applause fueled the flames surrounding the stage. Satan raised his scepter and shouted, "Let the show begin." A roar rippled through the shadowy amphitheater, and immediately the demons began miming a concert introduction. They beat drums made of skulls, red-hot iron guitars produced notes that were screeches, and warped trumpets spewed fire instead of air. It was all a grotesque parody of what on earth had been celebrated as art. Freddie was pushed to the center, still holding the microphone fused to his hand. Satan leaned down and said sarcastically, Sing what you've always sung, but this time for me, there is no glory here, only condemnation. Here your voice doesn't inspire, it enslaves." And then the chorus of thousands of demons began, screaming in distorted voices, we will change you." Each word was a hammer blow falling on souls, chaining them tighter. I watched as Bohemian Rhapsody was repeated by demons, not as a masterpiece, but as a distorted lament. Instead of harmonies, heartrending shrieks were heard. Each Galileo was a demonic scream. Each note became a whip that fell upon Freddie. The audience of the damned could not escape. They were forced to sing along with muffled voices, repeating lyrics that were now daggers in their souls. Satan walked around the stage, smiling mockingly. "Come, on earth." He turned concerts into temples and lyrics into prayers. "Now those prayers belong to me." Every song was once a seed, and now the harvest is torment. This is the light music of hell, chains, screams, and eternal fire. Freddie tried to close his mouth, but the microphone stuck tighter to his lips. Every attempt to remain silent was a new punishment. Flame erupted from his entrails and forced him to sing. His voice, which on earth shook stadiums, now shook the abyss with notes of condemnation. I saw tears of blood run down his face as he was forced to repeat choruses of glory distorted into eternal mockery. The Spirit spoke to me with pain. "Look closely. The enemy doesn't hate art, he perverts it. He doesn't hate music, he uses it. He doesn't hate gifts, he transforms them into chains." Freddie was created with unique talent, but he consecrated it to himself, to applause, to idolatry, and everything that is not surrendered to the Creator ends up as food for the destroyer. Tell them that no gift saves if it is not surrendered to Christ. Then I saw something even more terrifying. In the stands, souls who on earth had been unconditional fans were condemned to eternally sing his songs, not as pleasure, but as torment. Every time they shouted his name, their voices turned into embers that fell on their own bodies. I understood that idolatry binds not only the idol, but also those who worship it. The concert continued, and Satan ordered a new song. Demons began to sing "Nora Neon Bites the Dust," but transformed into a lament. Another one, "Bars in the Flames." Each word was a whip against souls. I saw how young adults and elders who had celebrated those songs were now forced to repeat them, understanding too late that what they had exalted in life was the door to the abyss. Freddie screamed, but his voice was no longer his own. It was an echo of hell, used as a chain, turned into a weapon against the very people who had idolized him, and Satan held it up as a trophy, saying, "Here is your champion, here is your hero, here is your star." On earth they applauded him. "Here he serves me as an eternal jester. Let him sing, let him suffer, let him chain." When the echo of that infernal concert began to fade, Satan raised his scepter and with a grim smile said, "Now let us show the audience the price of music, the cost of glory, the bill of the pact." In that instant, the stage transformed into a fiery courtroom. In the center appeared a table made of red-hot iron, and upon it was unfolded a huge fiery scroll. It was written with dark symbols and phrases that burned like hot coals. Satan lifted it with his claws and showed it to everyone. "This is your contract, Freddie. You didn't sign it with pen and ink, you signed it with actions, with every night of excess, with every altar of idolatry. You didn't give me your signature, you gave me your life." The audience of damned souls roared in wails, and the demons celebrated as if it were a spectacle. The scroll began to unfold, revealing scenes from his life. In one section, I saw lyrics to songs that had become anthems for generations. Satan pointed mockingly, "Every word that exalted the independence of man, every note that I despised limits, each chorus that transformed stadiums into temples was a signature on this contract. You didn't need to say yes to me, your voice was enough." Another section showed scenes of overflowing parties, of intertwined bodies, of altars of pleasure. Satan laughed. Each night of excess was an added clause. Each applause you received as if you were a god was a seal. The world adored you, and each adoration belonged to me. You were not the master of your destiny, Freddie, you were my servant. From the stage, the parchment burned brighter, and I saw phrases written in blood: glory for eternity, applause for a soul, freedom without surrender, The Spirit spoke to me firmly, see how the enemy deceives with phrases that seem beautiful, but are chains in disguise, freedom without surrender, slavery, glory without crosses, damnation. Everything that does not pass through Christ ends in a dark contract. Freddie tried to tear the parchment, but every time his hands touched it, the phrases adhered to his skin like burning tattoos. Words began to appear on his arms: idolatry, pride, excess, deceit, he screamed, trying to tear them off, but they sank deeper into his flesh, becoming chains that dragged him to the stage floor. Satan looked at him mockingly. Remember when the crowd shouted your name? That was your true mass. You didn't ask me for temples, you gave me stadiums. You didn't offer me incense, you gave me applause, and every applause was a signature here. The audience of damned souls screamed in pain, understanding that they too had participated in that pact by worshipping him as an idol. Then I saw something even more terrible. The scroll not only showed his past, it also showed the names of young people today, of fans who still play his songs, raise altars to his memory, and imitate his style. Each name was connected by threads of fire that descended from earth to hell. Satan proudly pointed out that his contract didn't end with his death. He lives on in every heart that idolizes him. His voice still serves me, his legacy still nourishes me. Christ appeared in the midst of that tribunal of shadows. His light pierced the parchment, and for an instant the letters trembled. His voice thundered, "Let no one be deceived. God cannot be mocked. What a man sows, so shall he reap. But my blood can erase what fire cannot destroy." Tell them there is still time. Tell them to break their pacts. Invisibles confessing my name. Tell them there is no song or glory worth more than eternal life with me. The Spirit spoke to me again. Tell them that silence is also a signature, that every time they remain silent in the face of idolatry they sign against it, that every time they exalt a man above God, they reaffirm the contract, but a sincere confession breaks even the darkest clause. Freddie screamed, tears of blood streaming down his face. His lips tried to form the word forgiveness, but the microphone fused to his hand distorted each syllable into distorted screams. The contract lit up with each attempt, as if mocking him. Too late, the court roared with a hellish verdict, guilty, 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 and each voice added another lock to his chains. The scroll closed in fire, but the phrases remained engraved on his body, marking him as a slave to the pact he had signed with his choices. The burning tribunal transformed into an even more gigantic stage. It was as if hell had decided to reconstruct Freddie's most famous concerts, but in a perverse, grotesque way. I saw the outline of a stadium that resembled the legendary Wembley, but its stands were not filled with fans, but with damned souls with faces distorted by pain. Instead of neon lights, there were torches of green fire, and the giant screens were burning mirrors projecting scenes of idolatry. Satan raised his scepter and shouted, "Let glory revive." But this time in chains. Immediately, a demonic roar filled the stadium. Demons disguised as musicians took up positions, guitars of red-hot iron, drums of hollow skulls, keyboards that shrieked like tortured souls, and in the center, Freddie, with the microphone fused to his hand, forced to sing what in life had made him eternal on earth. The audience or souls screamed unwillingly. Every time they opened their mouths to sing along, their throats filled with embers, but they couldn't stop. It was a reprise of an eternal concert, but every note was a chain, every chorus was torment. I watched as We Are the Champions was performed, but instead of victory, every word became a confession of condemnation. We are the damned, my friends, the demons repeated in chorus, laughing mockingly, and every laugh was a whip that fell upon souls. The Spirit spoke to me, see how the enemy turns glorious memories into eternal torture. What on earth was celebrated as triumph here is used as humiliation, because hell not only punishes, it also ridicules, not only destroys, it also exhibits, and everything not surrendered to Christ ends up as an eternal parody in the abyss. The hellish stadium began to project scenes of fans on earth. I saw multitudes singing his songs in bars, at concerts, tributes, on television. Each reprise fell like a spark on that stage, fueling the flames. Satan shouted with joy, "Thank you, humanity." As long as they continued to sing his lyrics, as long as they continued to idolize his name, his voice will live on here, like a chain, like a trophy, like a spectacle. Freddie wept blood as he sang. He tried to resist, but the microphone burned and compelled him. His hands trembled, his legs buckled under the weight of invisible chains, and every attempt to remain silent was punished with more fire. The demonic audience pointed at him. "Sing, slave, sing, fallen idol." I saw them recreate the famous Live, but instead of raising funds to save lives, every note was used to condemn them. The souls screamed, the demons danced, and Satan mocked. See, the same concert that was celebrated on earth as historic, here is eternal as mockery. This is how I work. What the world applauds, I turn into chains. In a moment, the screens of fire they showed little children on the ground wearing t-shirts with his image, singing his songs like hymns. Each child represented a new chain on stage. Satan pointed at him and shouted, "These are my new choir members. I don't need temples, I don't need altars. They themselves raise my cult in their homes, in their schools, in their celebrations." Christ appeared in the middle of the infernal stadium. His light was so intense that for an instant the concert stopped. His voice echoed over the stands, "He who raises idols raises chains. He who sings praises to men sings his own doom, but he who confesses my name will be free." There is still time, there is still salvation, but they must break with their idols before it is too late. Hearing this, some mirrors of fire cracked as if the prayers of the living were weakening the spectacle. Satan roared furiously, "Close your mouths, do not pray, do not confess. Every prayer up there is a blow against my theater down here." The concert continued, but Freddie could take it no more. His voice, which had been an instrument of human glory, was now an echo of eternal lament, and I understood that this was his destiny, to sing without ceasing, not for multitudes who loved him, but for demons who hated him, using him as a trophy of mockery. The infernal concert slowly faded, as if the flames had fulfilled their purpose for a moment. The stage of shadow dissolved, and suddenly, in the middle of the abyss, a dark altar shaped like a lectern appeared. On it rested a gigantic book chained with red-hot iron shackles. Satan pointed to it proudly and shouted, "This is the Book of Voices. Here are recorded the souls that were swept away by the music of my servant Freddie Mercury." Each note was a hook, each chorus a chain, each applause a seal. The book opened by itself, and thick smoke began to rise from its pages, screaming as if thousands of human throats. Each line was not ink, but petrified sound waves. Phrases from songs turned into shackles. I saw names written in flames, young, old, elderly, all who had given their hearts to the idolatry of his voice. Satan laughed mockingly, "Come, music does not die, music leaves its mark, its choruses live on in this book. And every soul who sang it in worship is recorded here. This is not a simple fan club, this is my eternal choir." Freddie, your contract was not just with you. It was with millions. You sang. They responded. You shone. They offered me their applause, and now they are mine. Freddie wept blood, falling to his knees before the book. His lips trembled. He tried to say something, but the burning microphone forced him to repeat fragments of his own songs. Each word spoken caused new chains to unfurl from the pages of the book, trapping more souls descending from the earth. I saw how some young people were at parties singing his songs at that very moment, and in the spiritual world, their voices were absorbed by that book. The Spirit spoke to me solemnly, "Tell them that not all music is harmless. Tell them that the enemy knows how to use melodies as hooks, that lyrics become doors. Worship does not belong to man, it belongs to the Creator, and when people sing with idolatry, they are signing this book without knowing it. Tell them not to be deceived. What seems like art may be an altar, what seems like fun may be a pact." The pages continued to turn, and I saw entire song lyrics transformed into hellish decrees. Choruses that millions had repeated were recorded as if they were prayers of condemnation. Every time a crowd shouted Freddie, that word became a fiery echo in the book, like a seal on a collective contract. Christ appeared in the midst of that scene. His light pierced the smoke, and his voice boomed like thunder. Whoever calls on my name will be saved. Whoever confesses my truth will tear these pages. My blood erases what no voice can erase. Tell them there is still time to remove their names from this book. Tell them they don't have to repeat the chains of others, that they can be free and confess my name out loud. I saw how some lines of the book began to fade, as if prayers on earth were erasing inscriptions. Every tear of a child who repented, every public declaration of someone saying, "I follow Christ." It was like fire that burned the pages and freed names. Satan screamed angrily, "No! That choir is mine, don't take it from me." But his fury couldn't stop the light that descended from heaven. The Spirit whispered to me, "Tell them that every comment in confession is a sword, that listening isn't enough, that they must declare that their voice weighs more in heaven than in hell. Let them write, let them speak, let them confess, because while they remain silent, the book continues to fill, but when they speak, the pages tear." Freddy was forced to sing in front of the book. His distorted voice was absorbed by the pages, and each note was a new chain. He screamed with rage, but it was too late. I realized that he could no longer break his contract, that his voice was no longer his own. The only testimony that counts is that of the living, not the dead. The book closed with a bang, and its chains tightened more tightly. Satan lifted the lectern and declared, "This is my trophy, the idol of music, turned scribe of chains. His voice was my weapon and his legacy remains my choir. Let the living imitate him, let the dead accompany him. Hell sings with Freddy and will continue to sing as long as there are those who idolize him." The lectern and the book of voices vanished into black smoke, and suddenly the stage of hell transformed into something even more terrifying, a dark coliseum, a theater of crowns. Above, columns of liquid fire supported arches that looked like open mouths devouring souls. In the center, a rotating platform began to rise, and upon it was placed Freddy, chained with a molten microphone in his hand. Satan appeared on a throne of twisted iron and raised his scepter. "Today we will crown the idol of the multitudes with what he loved most in life, lust, pride, and idolatry. Each crown will be his burden, eternal. Every weight will be his sentence." Giant demons appeared carrying deformed crowns, made not of gold, but of bones, snakes, and burning coals. The first crown was placed on his head. It was made of burning thorns intertwined with symbols of carnal pleasure. Satan said, "This is the crown of lust, every night of excess. Every altar of sin, every body you gave as an offering is now an eternal weight upon you." When it was placed on him, his skin began to burn, and streams of fire descended from his face like tears of lava. Freddy screamed, but the microphone transformed his pain into distorted melodies. The second crown was even heavier. It was made of broken mirrors that reflected images of stadiums, applause, and tributes. Satan placed it on him, saying, "This is the crown of pride. You fed on applause, you lived to be worshipped, you said your voice was your God, your stage was your altar. Now this pride is your prison. Every mirror will reflect your empty glory until eternity." The mirror shards embedded themselves in his skull, constantly showing images of his past. I saw reflections of concerts, interviews, and magazine covers, all turned into accusation. The third crown was raised solemnly. It was made of deformed hands that intertwined like chains. In the palms burned the faces of fans who had worshipped him. Satan declared, "This is the crown of idolatry. Every soul that elevated you as God, every young person who placed your name above Christ, every tear shed at your songs, now weighs upon you. This is not glory, it is shared condemnation. They chanted your name on earth, and hear their voices are chains on your head." When the crown was placed, a deafening scream filled the Colosseum. Freddy fell to his knees. His neck could not hold the weight. The audience, the demonic man clapped his hands with chains. Each clap was a metallic clang that shook the arena. The crowns glow with fire, crushing him more and more as Satan laughed from his throne. "Here is your king, humanity. Here is the idol you raised with such fervor. Here is the fruit of your admiration. Let them see it, let them learn, let them follow it if they wish to share its burden." The Spirit spoke to me with a voice of thunder, "Look and speak. Tell them that every crown that does not come from me becomes a burden, that lust is not pleasure, it is chain, that pride is not triumph, it is a fall, that idolatry is not love, it is condemnation. Tell them not to be deceived, that no idol holds its crown in eternity, only the crown of life I give remains. Freddy tried to stand, but each attempt sank him deeper. I saw his knees dig into the burning platform, his back bent under the weight, and his lips could barely utter a sound. Every time he tried to scream for help, the microphone forced him to repeat distorted, mocking choruses. Satan pointed at him and said, "This is my eternal clown." His glory was his trap, his voice was his pact, and now his crowns are his sentence. Christ appeared at the top of the Colosseum, and his light pierced the crowns. His voice resounded, "There is still time for the living. Do not crown idols, do not erect statues of ashes, do not call a hero who is already a slave. I am the only one who gives an incorruptible crown." Tell them that while they live, they should choose, because if they do not choose, others will place crowns on their heads, and those crowns will be eternal chains. The Colosseum trembled, and some chains in the audience began to break. I saw souls on earth weeping, confessing, renouncing idols. Each confession weakened the spectacle. Satan roared with fury, "Do not shut your mouths, do not confess anything." But it was too late. The light of Christ was already crossing generations. The theater of crowns, it began to fade, and in its place appeared a vast, open space, as if it were a cosmic void filled with echoes. There, the burning crowns that crushed Freddy transformed into symbols floating around him, one of lust, another of pride, another of idolatry. Each revolved like a fiery planet around his chained body. Satan rose from his throne and shouted, "Look, humanity, these are the 3 crowns that you love. You dress them up as freedom, as art, as glory, but here they are shown in their true form, eternal chains." The demons applauded with distorted voices while Freddy shrank, unable to bear any more weight. Suddenly, a great book made of light appeared above, distinct from the book of voices. This was the book of generations, and its pages reflected not only names, but also cultural imprints, invisible heritages. Christ opened it and pointed to a page where Freddy's name shone not as salvation, but as a warning, and from his name descended dark roots that extended to the earth. I saw murals painted on walls with his face, t-shirts with his image, films that chronicled his life, documentaries that presented him as a genius, tributes that filled stadiums even decades after his death. Each of these tributes was a dark route that connected him to new generations. Satan laughed with joy. "Come, even though he is condemned, he still reigns in your culture. His voice lives on, his image is still exalted, his memory remains an altar. That is what I do. I turn fallen idols into seeds of idolatry." The Spirit spoke to me forcefully, "Tell them that idolatry does not die with death, that what is sown as a cultural cult becomes a spiritual heritage. Many think it is harmless to remember, sing, and pay homage, but they don't see that these practices feed invisible altars, and as long as his name is celebrated as God, his condemnation will continue to inspire chains." Christ raised his hand and his voice thundered, "Freddie Mercury, your name was exalted on earth, but here it is the weight of condemnation. Your voice was celebrated, but here it echoes pain. Your legacy is a warning to the living. Let no one say they were not warned. Idolatry drags, fame deceives, applause lies, only my cross saves. Let the living listen and decide, because their time is not yet over." The book began to show current scenes. I saw young people singing his songs in bars, convinced it was just fun. I saw families watching movies that glorified him, not understanding that they were fueling nostalgia that became altars. I saw little children repeating his name, unaware that they were inheriting chains. Each image was a dark route that added to the legacy of idolatry. Satan shouted with satisfaction, "Thank you, humanity. As long as you continue to set up idols, I continue to rule. I don't need you to worship me, it's enough that you worship mine." And every time his voice is repeated, every time his image is exalted, a new root is sown in the book of generations. Christ looked into the void and issued an ultimatum: whoever continues to sow idolatry will reap chains, Whoever confesses my name will inherit life. Today they can still break roots, today they can still cut ties, not with silence, but with confession. Let them speak. Let them write, let them declare, because the mouth that confesses life breaks invisible contracts. He who remains silent unites himself. He who confesses is freed. Freddie wept blood, trying to shout to the multitudes of the earth, "Don't follow me," but his voice was distorted into blasphemy, and each attempt only strengthened his grounds. I understood that he could no longer warn, that he no longer had the chance. His condemnation was eternal, his testimony was a silent warning. The only one who can speak now is you, the one who listens, the one who still has time. The Spirit whispered to me, "Tell them not to glorify what heaven condemns, tell them not to be deceived by sweet voices that hide chains, tell them not to confuse talent with salvation, nor art with redemption. Let them know that everything that is not surrendered to Christ ends up being the seed of hell, and that today they have the opportunity to break with that legacy." The void began to fill with demonic chants that repeated distorted phrases from his songs, as if hell wanted to seal the sentence with mockery. But the light of Christ continued to shine, showing that although Freddie was already condemned, the living still had a choice. The void where the crowns floated transformed into an endless tunnel of echoes. The voices of millions repeated fragments of Freddie's songs, but distorted as if they were collective laments. The air burned and vibrated as if each musical note were a hammer striking the walls of liquid fire. In that tunnel, I saw images of entire generations that had inherited his influence parade by, little children singing his lyrics without understanding their meaning, teenagers repeating his phrases as slogans of rebellion, adults who still remembered him as a symbol of freedom, and elders who venerated him as a cultural legend. They all marched bound by the same invisible choir that descended into the abyss. Satan laughed and said, "Come, one man is enough for me to drag millions. I don't need armies, just an idol with a powerful voice and a devoted heart." Freddie was forced to lead that procession. They dragged him in chains as if he were the choirmaster of the damned. His every step resonated like a war drum, and every attempt to remain silent was punished with a new distorted choir. The microphone fused to his hand glowed like hot iron, and waves emanated from it that didn't liberate, but chained. The Spirit spoke to me, "Tell them that hell also evangelizes, that it uses culture, music, and spectacle to sow seeds of idolatry." Freddie wasn't the only one, but his voice became a banner, and every time they glorify him, they renew their pact. Let them know that the enemy doesn't need temples of stone because he has stadiums, concerts, screens, and songs that don't confuse art with an altar. In that tunnel, an even more terrifying scene suddenly opened up, a kind of hellish exhibition hall. There were living statues of Freddie, multiplied in hundreds of forms, each representing a facet of his life: the young man with ambition, the singer at the height of fame, the man of excess, the idol of the masses. They were all chained, they all cried fire, they all repeated the same distorted songs. It was like a museum of condemnation. Satan walked among those statues and said, "Here is my gallery, here is the art the world celebrated. Every image is a trophy, every replica is a mockery. You paint it on murals, I multiply it in chains. You call it genius, I use it as an eternal jester." And the demons applauded, repeating his name like a distorted mantra. Freddie shouted among the statues, "No more." But his voice wasn't free. Every word was distorted into notes of condemnation. He tried to break one of his own replicas, but when he touched it, he melted into it as if it became part of the museum. I understood that every homage on earth was a new statue added in hell, a new burden on his soul. Christ appeared in the middle of that exhibition hall, and his light shook the statues. His voice thundered, "He who worships images worships chains. He who bows before idols becomes a reflection of his condemnation. Tell them not to raise statues of ashes, not to paint murals of condemnation, not to write songs of idolatry, that every homage without a cross is an altar for the enemy." The Spirit showed me in a vision how tributes to Freddie were organized on earth, how crowds still sang his songs as if they were prayers. Every time this happened, new statues appeared in that hellish museum. It was as if hell fed its gallery with the nostalgia of the living. I also saw some young people burst into tears, tearing up posters, burning records, and praying for confession. "Jesus, I don't want idols in my life." And those confessions were rays of light that destroyed entire statues in the museum. Satan screamed furiously, "No!